So today we start actually with the first lecture related to the course Academic Freedom and Human Rights. We are very pleased to have Professor Gianmario Demuro. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it in person, but we hope we'll be able to host him again in November. Professor Demuro is full professor of constitutional law at the Department of Law at the University of Cagliari, where he teaches constitutional law and coordinates the doctorate in legal sciences. He is an expert on regional state, constitutional conventions, academic freedom and human rights, Italian political system, and European fundamental rights. He is the author of many books and nearly 100 international articles in the above mentioned topics. And he recently published a book on human rights in Europe and an important contribution on the European dimension of freedom of the arts and science, which was published in 2021. I mean, besides his expertise, I have the pleasure to collaborate with Gianmario since 2019. He is one of the founding members of Scholars at Risk Italy. He has been an active and precious member of the steering committee of Scholars at Risk, and a constant source of guidance. So I really thank Gianmario for being here with us today and for everything he is doing for the broader project we share. I'm very pleased and grateful for Lucia Busatta, who has accepted to be a respondent today. Lucia is assistant professor at the Department of Cellular, Computational and Integrative Biology, CIBIO, and is an expert of, among other things, what interests us today is she's an expert in biolaw, life sciences, and constitutional law. You already met Simone, just a reminder for those who weren't here today with us yesterday. Simone is an assistant professor at the Faculty of Law and shares with Lucia his expertise in biolaw and bioethics and comparative constitutional law, and is also part of the project Jean Monnet. So my role more or less is finished. What we thought was to have first a seminar by Gianmario and then two comments from Lucia and Simone, and then we are very happy to have your comments and questions in a very informal way, so don't hesitate to raise your hands at the end of the presentation and share your opinion or ask questions. So Gianmario, the floor is yours, and thank you so much again for your presence with us today.
Okay, let me first thanks a lot my dear colleague Esther, that we are a couple of years that we are working together in this issue, which are one of the most important issue, maybe not discussed so much, but always in one of the benchmark of what is happening around the world about what someone call illiberal democracies. So the idea that academic freedom can be only one part only of a set, which is not related to the constitutional state. And so we need more and more to talk about academic freedom. And now let me thank also my young colleagues, Lucia and Simone, and they are able to discuss with me this issue. I'm very happy that they are here because I know how hard they work on biolaw in Trento, and how is excellent this work in that university. So today, Esther told me that the floor is a mixed up, so that we have law students, but not always law students. So I will talk in a way that I hope is understandable for everybody, not only for lawyers. So I just drew up some slide. To be very sincere, I don't like very much slides, but because I'm an old style professor, so I'd like to talk. But in this occasion, slides just help to fix a concept. And we can just start with the second slide, and there is a sort of an abstract of what we will talk this afternoon. We will talk about the freedom of scientific research and the academic freedom. That from the European point of view, let me say why I choose this way, because as we will see in a couple of minutes, every European constitution has freedom of scientific research and academic freedom. But there is a European dimension of this universal right. There is, I would say, in a word in Latin, like a summa of all the constitutional identities on this issue. So we will discuss about freedom of scientific research and academic freedom from the European point of view. And as you know, if you have a clear idea what is happening in the last years in Europe, there is a big discussion between EU and European Parliament and the Commission, and some of the states that they are inside EU that are, I would say, on the border maybe they are just became a non-democratic state, but they are always just on the edge of this discussion. As you listen to the news a couple of days ago, for example, Hungary has there's the proposal about the Commission to get out 65% of the funds, of the European funds, to Hungary because of breach of human rights, because of breach of rule of law, because of breach of the respect of universal rights. So it's interesting to point from the European point of view, and then I will say something about the Italian case, if we can say that there is an Italian case. So these freedoms are founded directly on the value of the human person and the common law tradition of freedoms and fundamental rights in Europe. This is a challenge, for European scholars that say that freedoms are, of course, written in a test, and this test is called Nizza Charter, and from the European law point of view, it's European law. So that means that these rights has to be respected like all the others main pillars of European Union. Just to make a simple example, freedom of free circulation in Europe, which is one of the most important pillar of the European relationship. So this charter, I don't want to talk about the complex situation after the Amsterdam Treaty, but just let me say one thing. This charter is European constitutional law right. So there is a charter that's called Nizza Charter that is the strongest values of the European. And these freedoms are also part of the common, I would say, I will use the word in English, common law tradition. That means rules that comes from the past, rules that come from the strong tradition of being European, a common law tradition of freedoms and fundamental rights in Europe. So that means that every single state in Europe has this freedom. But the main significance of this freedom at the end is directly related to the human person. If you, I know that there are different students that comes from different countries, but just to make an example for the Italian students, the human person is the value that is written in Article 2 of the Italian Constitution, that the person, the human person, is exactly in the center of the value of our constitutional law and also in the constitution of the other states. So I'm sure that there is a European dimension of academic freedom, and at the end of this seminar, I will just remember a very important case from the Court of Justice. There is a European dimension of academic freedom that is a sort of a hermeneutical parameter of every national constitutional identity to achieve a shared European constitutional identity. As we will see in the case that is related to Hungary, there are also two cases, one to Poland and to Hungary, which are New West, but they're not directly related to the academic freedom, means that Europe can say that every single state has to defend academic freedom and freedom of scientific research. So if this dimension is clear, we can just start. If we go with slide number 3, please. Okay. We will talk about freedom of scientific research, academic freedom, European Charter of Human Rights, constitutional identity, and political constitutionalism. So let's start. Let's use for first of all the slide number 6, please. Okay. In the European Charter of Human Rights, if you look at the European Charter of Human Rights, you will find Article 13, which is titled Freedom of the Arts and the Sciences. The arts and scientific research shall be free of constraint. Academic freedom shall be respected. Let me say, first of all, what is interesting in this article. The most important and interesting thing is that arts and scientific research are related. So we are talking about sculpture, video, paintings, architecture, all the kind of things that the creativity of a human person can develop. And arts are, in this thought, part of another very important right, and that I'm sure that you will remember, the freedom of expression. The freedom of, in Italy, is Article 21, and related to the arts and the science, you will find Article 33. But all start with the freedom of expression. So the idea that we are free to express our thoughts, and we are free to express what we think, even something against the power, even something against the people who wants to ask to us to do something against democracy. So freedom of the arts means the, I would say, the highest level of freedom of artistic expression, because the artists participate in public exchange of information and ideas. So, and that means that if you come from a human person, having arts at the highest level of creativity, that means a more democratic growth, a more participation of the state. So this first part of the article say that the state has not to interfere with this form of expression. So the idea, and you will find the same idea, maybe a little bit different in Italy, because Italy has more open creativity related to the arts, but they are almost similar all around Europe, is that arts, freedom of expression, and scientific research has to be in a place and in a situation to be independent from constraint. They has to be independent from constraint because the enemy of creativity and the freedom of expression and the scientific research is someone abstract like the state that can say to you, you have to do this, you have to say this, or you have to make research only in this field. Article 13, so it's present in almost European constitutions. Just to make an example, if you look at the constitution in France, you will not find the exact article, but if you look, you know, it's very interesting, the historical constitutional in history of the constitution in France. You can look at the you can look directly at the preamble in France. For example, freedom of scientific research and the arts has been interpreted by the Conseil Constitutionnel, which is the constitutional court in France, on the basis of Article 11 of the Declaration of the Rights of 1789. That means during the French Revolution. So freedom of the arts and freedom of scientific research, they are free of constraint. That means that they cannot be blocked by any idea of the state. And what is different is that academic freedom, which is related to the arts and scientific research, shall be respected, which is related to the idea that the existence of individual right, universal right for academic freedom is strongly related to the idea that art and scientific research shall be free of constraints. Just to be more simple in my opinion, is just if we don't have scientific research free of constraint, you will not have academic freedom. They are completely related. And look how is written this article: shall be respected. That means that there is no limits for academic freedom. there is something also to say that who is the subject of this article, of course, is the scientific research, of course, are the academics in the university, but we can say also they are the scientists in not only in the university, but the scientists working in other area. I'm very curious to discuss with my young colleagues about biolaw problem about this for the scientists who works for the big factories for medicine. But the freedom to scientists is the strongest idea that is related to the idea that nobody can be constrained. So if we look at the object, we can also say that the essence of the arts, and I will say of the scientific research, is creativity. So the arts must not be interfered by the public powers, and it's clear there cannot be censorship on the arts or influencing them or influencing the methods, the content, and the style of artistic expression. This could be, of course, sometimes could be difficult, you know, to not to be shocked, for example, by creativity or by arts. Yeah, I just make an example, a personal experience. If you go in Venice and you go to the Biennale di Venezia, now it's the period still of the art Biennale di Venezia, there is a pavilion, Ukrainian pavilion, which is very interesting because there are some of the installation, I mean, the new form of contemporary art are completely different from the past. And I can tell that they talk about the war, and they talk about the war in a very, very tough way. I mean, it's not, if you go there, yeah, I don't want to just, you know, to describe something which has to be seen, but you will see, for example, there's a video for Marina Abramovich that most of you, I'm sure that you know her, which is very interesting about the war, now, not only about the Ukrainian war. So if art shall be free, we have to be ready to understand and to see even art that we don't like, or maybe that is too difficult for us. And in a sort of a sense, this could be also for which can be also very clear with the scientific research. If we go to the not the last, but the slide before the last. Thank you very much. There is the new Magna Carta Universitatum of 2020, which is very interesting. Was signed by a lot of universities a couple of days ago in Bologna. Look at what is written in this charter. University question dogmas and establish doctrines and encourage critical thinking in all students and scholars. Academic freedom is their lifeblood. Open inquiry and dialogue their nourishment. This is, I mean, in my opinion, one of the most clear ideas, no? That if we come back to Galileo idea, the idea that university question dogmas. So from this point of view, the express word, the arts shall be free, and the scientific culture shall be free. This means that, talking from this point of view, there is no limits. I know I'm saying something which is very, maybe difficult to agree, but scientific research has no limits. If we want to find a limit, we started with a human being, we started with a human person, but the only limit that we can find is human dignity. The only limit that we can find is finally the integrity of the person. But it's difficult, very difficult to explain what this means in common terms. And for example, there is a big discussion, and we will not discuss today, but maybe during the discussion with the two colleagues, we can talk about this. The idea that there is a limit also with the integrity of the animals, that they are used for biological research. It's very famous in Italy, the case, the macaco case, about the trials for medicine called Lucentis, which can help to find a solution for the blindness, for the blindness, to slow down the blindness of a special question which is made about this. But the integrity of the person, we're not talking about the animals now, we're not talking about this case, but the integrity of the person, it's the only limit for creativity and for the science. So academic freedom is completely related to this idea. And academic freedom is a freedom without limits. And if you want to put limits to academic freedom, what you are doing is that you're not only going against the human being or against the person, but you're also getting you're getting against the idea that democracy is the most important value in Europe. There is another question that also I would like to discuss with my young colleagues is what is science? I mean, what are the rules of the science? In my opinion, it's very easy. You just follow Popper theory, just to know that the falsification theory is the only theory that can define what a science is. Because during this period, this very difficult period of the pandemic, what is returning is the idea that there could be different point of view of science. No, there is only one science. And for example, the Constitutional Court in Italy wrote several times, if we talk, just for example, in a very difficult case called stamina case, there is written very clear in the judgments of the Constitutional Court that science has its own statute, and the law cannot make constraint on the statute of the science. because science is science, and it's independent from the law. So, integrity of the person is the only limit. But what happened in Europe about the respect of academic freedom? We can say that about the respect of academic freedom, it's a very new case. I just want to remember to all the students that we have the European Charter of Human Rights, which is directly related to another system, which is not EU, but it's the Council of Europe. And the Council of Europe is bigger than European Union. For example, there is Russia inside. And and there is a strong jurisprudence that it's more related to the freedom of information. But there is a case in June 2009 directly, because for the first time talk about academic freedom. The case is Suruk versus Turkey. And is written in this judgment, academic freedom comprised of academics' freedom to freely express their opinion about the institution or system in which they work, and freedom to disseminate knowledge and truth without restriction. This is funny because I want just to say to my dear colleague Esther that for the first time in my life, I signed the disclaimer for the voice and the image, which are related, of course, to the privacy without any trouble. But what I found interesting that in that disclaimer, there is something which I never noticed before, but now I have noticed, that is related to, and this could be an exercise that the students can do, that in this disclaimer, I just find, I don't want to use a lot of minutes about that, but in this University of Trento disclaimer, at the second page, there is a dichiarazione, this one, declaration on the content of your speech. And it's something which is interesting because I declare that my opinion is not against someone, diffamatorio ingiurioso. And also I declare that what I say is mine and not owned by someone else. For example, a copyright law. So it's interesting because a university, because maybe, I'm sure this is the law, but sometimes the devil is in the small details. It's interesting that the University of Trento and all the other universities asked to the professors to say, look at what you say, because if you say something that is property of someone else, we don't want the responsibility for this. So this is an interesting case. I just say to the students, study this format because it's interesting, and just to know if this is related to the academic freedom or not. But anyway, the case that I want just to say something more, and then I'm going to finish my intervention, is the case C66/18 Commission versus Hungary. And this case, it's a very interesting case I'm sorry I didn't put the case inside, but it's fine like this. But anyway, I just want to say about this case that for the first time, the European Court of Justice state this, that academic freedom is answering in general terms in the second sentence of Article 13 of the Charter, according to which academic freedom shall be respected. So no doubts that Europe wants that academic freedom should be respected. And what happened in Hungary, that and then this case is more known as the European University case in Hungary. The Advocate General, which is part of the Court of Justice, just say that it's a fundamental right to freedom of the arts and science, and it's autonomous of the general freedom to all opinions. So just to say in very clear and synthetic way, academic freedom and university autonomy are completely and absolutely related. And this means that if a state like Hungary breaches this universal right, has to be punished by European law. So in that case, it's a European unitary right. That means that we do have, since Lisbon, a construction of European values that they are written in the European Charter of Rights. So, in the case of European rights, just to become to the end of this introduction, what these values are shared by everyone. We can certainly say that there is an untouchable European dimension of academic freedom because of Charter of Nice, and a clear hermeneutical parameter for constitutional identity. But for the future, and then we go back to Magna Carta Universitatum, universities require a reliable social contract with social society, one which supports pursuit of the highest possible quality of academic work, with full respect for institutional autonomy. So university question dogmas and establish doctrines. Academic freedom is their lifeblood. And this is the real strongest significance of this universal right. And in the dimension of the European value, but also in every single state. So every single state has to respect academic freedom, to respect scientific research without constraint, not only at the national level, but also at the European level. If we don't respect at the national level and the European level can say to the state, like is doing the Commission now with Hungary, that means that you are against the value that they are part of the strongest value in Europe. Then we used to say this only about the rule of law, but we can say this now about academic freedom. So I will stop here. I think I said maybe too much, but I hope that there is the opportunity to discuss with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gianmario, and I ask you just to... Thank you so much. I'm sure there will be many points of reflection and questions from all the people here, but I would like to ask Lucia to sit on my place. And just a second, I want to...
We can, okay, perfect.
Yes. Thank you, Lucia.
So, well, good afternoon, and thank you very much, Esther, for having invited me here. And good afternoon, Professor Demuro. Piacere di
Ciao, Lucia.
My 5 minutes, 7, will take some hints, some points from Professor Demuro's presentation, and I will try to focus on some issues connected with scientific and academic freedom. First of all, a theoretical issue, which is a sort of, I would say, pre-focus with regards to Professor Demuro's presentation, because he was finishing his talk saying that it is important to pursue the guarantee of academic freedom and to ensure that this constitutional principle is made effective, is made concrete, is respected and guaranteed. So what I wanted to focus on is how to do so, and which are public powers, I would say constitutional powers to do so. And to answer this question, I have to go back and to see how academic freedom is guaranteed throughout the world. So we can say that there are 3 different models of academic or freedom, or freedom of scientific research. I would use equally these 2 periphrases, these 2 nouns, to say the same thing. I mean, freedom of research, academic freedom is the same to me tonight. Maybe in another context we can also differentiate a little bit, but tonight we mean the same, exactly the same thing. So these 3 different models actually find their origin in constitutional traditions and in historical evolution of constitutions. But at the end, what it really means is that these 3 models just come to the same end. And I will show it to you in 1 minute. So the first model is, I would say, the purely liberal or purely general model. In these sorts of constitutions, you don't find the protection of academic freedom explicitly written, but you just find freedom of expression, and doing research is part of freedom of expression. So from this point of view, research is very similar to art, literature, culture, because it is something connected to freedom of expression. And we find this model, for example, in the USA or in Canada. Recalling Professor Demuro's presentation, the question I have here is, which are the limits of freedom of expression, and which are the limits of research freedom if we understand research as a form of expression? Is it morality? But is morality really meaningful for scientific research? So this model is, well, has its historical reasons, but it leaves lots of questions for us. Second and 3 models are those models that Professor Demuro was referring to, because we can find them in Europe. The second one is the liberal model of scientific freedom. We can find it in the European Charter of Fundamental Rights, Article 13, the one we have been reading together before. Why am I referring to a liberal model? Because the European Charter of Fundamental Rights, as well as other constitutions in Europe that adopt this model, simply say academic freedom or freedom of scientific research is recognized, ensured, guaranteed. That's it. But then there is a third model. The third model is the Italian one, which has also been adopted by Spain or Portugal, and is the promotional one. So in Italy, we don't have just academic freedom, but the state promotes academic research. And this does make a difference in constitutional language and in constitutional traditions, because this phrase means that the state must intervene to promote academic research or research activities. So the next question is how? How does the state promote academic research? Building universities, of course, hiring researchers, good researchers, hopefully, but also funding research. And money are really very important for research. So here I'm coming to the second part of my discussion, which is very linked to what Professor Demuro was saying with reference to the freedom of researchers inside the university or within the community. Because funding means giving money to research, okay? Means funding research projects is actually a way of orienteering scientific research. So public powers must be very, very aware of the immense power they have. Because if a state decides to, if the European Union, just to say, decide to fund just projects concerning gender equality, well, we must be very happy. Gender gap and gender differences are an issue. The European Union is very much involved in promoting gender equality. So the European Union is funding several projects, research projects on gender equality. Fine, but we have to keep in mind that resources are always very scarce. We don't have money to do whatever we want. Therefore, if public powers decide to fund some projects, then they are giving a line to research activities. And this means that they can interact, they can somehow interfere with research freedom. Do you know what I mean? Okay. So this is not to say that research projects on gender equality are bad. I want to be clear. I love research projects on gender equality or whatever, but it is important to bear in mind that public powers, once funding public research, have to remember that they are actually exercising a huge power because they are orienteering research freedom. And for example, I'm working in the Department of Biotechnology. They cannot work without public fundings on their research on rare diseases, cancer diseases, genetic diseases or whatever. But if from one day to the other, the state, the republic decides to fund just cancer treatments and cancer research, then what happens to those who are studying Alzheimer's disease? Okay, so it is important that research funding is plural in order to ensure academic freedom, freedom of scientific research, and to ensure a real progress of science and pluralism in scientific research. Pluralism in scientific research does not mean that everyone can think whatever they want. Pluralism in academic research means that the researcher can actually choose his field of research. Finally, third part. The third part is on instruments to ensure academic freedom. So how can I really ensure that, for example, a research project that has been funded is conducted in a good way? How can I really ensure that my colleague Simone is doing good research? Who can control academic research? And be careful once when we talk about control over constitutional freedom, we are talking about powers. Who has the power to control? And actually, the answer cannot be diverse than saying academic freedom must be controlled by the academic community. So it is the academic community in itself that finds, looks, searches, elaborates the rules and the standards to ensure that a research is a good research, that a paper is a good paper, that a research project deserves fundings. Okay, so and this is part of the research integrity. Research integrity is a newly born concept that means several things. Research integrity means the sum of both scientific and methodological integrity and solidity of the study conducted, but also of the researcher's behavior. I share my office with Simone. What if I go on Simone's desk and just stole his notes and then I wrote an article basing my research on his notes? This is not a behavior which is compatible with the behavior that a good researcher must have. The scope, the goal of research integrity is to ensure that research activity is reliable, trustable, correct, independent. So these should be the qualities of research, and the scope of research integrity and the principles of research integrity is to ensure these qualities. So research integrity is also a set of rules governing research, and it is very peculiar because, you know, there is a very general understanding of research integrity which embraces all academic communities, all scientific communities, and then there are also specific rules belonging to each scientific community, and they all have the scope to ensure, to grant that research activities are conducted very well. And this is the only way to ensure that research remains independent, remains free, and remains reliable from the outside. So people on the street can say, okay, they are researchers, they are doing well, and I trust what they are telling me. Okay. So finally, which is the final goal of all this stuff, is that academic freedom is made as has the scope to ensure the social value of science, to promote the fact that science has to pursue the social good, a good for the community, not for the individual researcher. So that's it. And thank you so much, Simone.
Sì, forse sì. Ok. No, vale tapparelle su, sì. E poi spegniamo. So, thanks and good afternoon, good evening. Buon pomeriggio al professor Demuro. È un piacere essere qui assieme. I will try to be very brief, and I just want to highlight in some of many points that Professor Demuro tackled, and I will be very a lot of less systematic than Lucia, so I'm sorry for this. I just want to highlight some issues that I think that you will find also during the other parts and seminars of this course. The first one is that we are facing, and we will work on a very multidimensional concept. So when we refer to academic freedom, we are talking about, so from a legal standpoint, we have to have in this nature, this complex and plural nature of the concept very, very clear. We are talking about very different things which must be taken into account as an integral whole. So, and this is something very, very difficult to handle. So, for instance, one cannot speak of academic freedom without speaking also of the freedom of scientific research. The second point is the relevance of the European, the EU dimension. And this is very, I think this is a point that we have to highlight, because especially in the last few years, when we refer, at least in the European dimension, to the need to guarantee and to protect and to promote academic freedom and freedom of research, we are referring also to the existence to something that is part of a common constitutional ground at the European level. So this is something that if states do not want to guarantee or protect or promote, then it will be up to the institutional, to the European institution to act. And the case of Hungary is very clear, the role of the Commission, but also especially of the European Court of Justice in recalling national states of the existence of a common ground or common core, which is binding for each state. So maybe at least when we refer to the core concept, the core idea of academic freedom and freedom of research, but this is something more than I'm asking, more than I'm saying. This is something that is undisposable for EU member if of the member state. So in this sense, I think that protection of academic freedom from a European perspective may become a new context of confrontation or clash, maybe between the affirmation of the existence of a set of common European values, able to stand also against or before states call for the prevalence of national interest, the public order, security, or as in the case of Hungary, the public interest in controlling formally how a private university decided to organize itself, its structure, and its research. So more or less, as the migration governance and the protection of judicial independence, I think that we have to think about the protection of academic freedom as a context, as an area where the idea of national identity on the one hand and the raising and then strengthening of the idea of a common core, of European common core of constitutional principle will be at front. Coming to for maybe a more concrete perspective, we spoke a lot about limits, about promotion, but also possible limitation of the scope, the object, the subject of the exercise of academic freedom and freedom of research. And of course, if we accept the idea that when we refer to academic freedom, we are talking about something that goes very close to the essential core of the Constitution. We heard reference to human dignity, autonomy, personal freedom, freedom of expression. So we have also, and especially public powers must accept that limits must be an exception when we refer to academic freedom, and also to freedom of research. So you have to pay very attention in the way in which, also in the way in which states provides for promotional regulation of academic freedom or scientific research, in order to understand if the neutrality of the research and the neutrality of the limitation put on the content, the object of a research is guaranteed, or if the state puts a limit in order to impede or prohibit, even if not directly, a specific line of research. For instance, with regard to scientific research, a key example could be the research with human embryos, for instance, or if it's a limits which is general, it's not value or content or oriented. So this is something. So because, for instance, and I'm stopping and I'm finishing, but if, for instance, if we think the case of Italy, of course, no, which are the counter interests that can legitimate a state to put some boundaries, some limits to a line of research, or to more generally to the academic freedom. Of course, the protection of certain ethical values, or some specific public interest, national security, public order, something that is in the interest of the general population. So, for instance, in Italy, let's say, because just to put things less clear and less white and black, which is definitely a promotional state, but the research with embryo is forbidden because of the idea of protecting unethical values, the interest of life for the embryo. And the Italian constitution say that this is okay. This is completely within the constitutional limits and the constitutional dimension. And also when we talk about the promoting and financing the public research, even when the Italy, I don't want to target in Italy, but just to problematize the idea and the ideas and concept, decided to exclude by the public funding all those scientific projects that, for instance, that make use of cells derived from human embryo. A court in Italy said that this was okay. So a state can legitimately decide to exclude from public funding a specific line of research because of its content or its method. Again, Lucia stressed the fact that it's will be the scientific community to assess its method and to guarantee the feasibility and the soundness of the method and the research results. So this is a very brief example in order to let you understand, or at least think about how can be difficult to precisely understand the content, but also how far public institutions, public authorities, even private authorities can go in promoting, but also in regulating, simply regulating academic freedom and scientific research. I think I have to stop here. Thank you.
Thank you to Lucia and Simone. Gianmario, would you like, time is running short and I would like to leave some time to students if they want to ask questions. Would you like to respond briefly to Lucia and Simone, and we leave and we then move to questions, or would you like straight away to take also some?
No, I can say something, and the first thing that I would like to say is thank you very much to Simone and Lucia, because I've heard very interesting thing. Let me start with Lucia. In my opinion, freedom of expression and freedom of scientific research and academic freedom has the same limit. That means that if you we don't have enough time, but we will have it in the future. But if you look at the Article 21 in the Italian Constitution, and you look of the moralità pubblica, senso del pudore, it's difficult to translate in English, but at the end, it's the real question is, even for journalists, when you express your opinion, are you going against the human dignity of someone? So at the end, I'm sure that academic freedom has the lowest level of limits, but if we want to achieve something which is more important in the freedom of expression, because without freedom of expression there is no democracy, and so you have to be brave in this. So you have just to say that freedom of expression is the only limit, not the morality, because we can talk for hundreds of years what morality is, but maybe we can agree on what is human dignity. So this is my first comment. The second comment is, Lucia, you got the point. I mean, it's the point here in Italy. And I will say there is a political battle. I know that we are going to the elections on Sunday, but I can use this word because she's a senatore a vita, so she's not need to go to the election. I'm talking about the senatrice Cattaneo, Elena Cattaneo. She works a lot on the idea that science in Italy has to be more free and has to be more funded. Just make one example: Human Technopole in Milano during the Renzi government was one of the issues that we discussed. So we're not a liberal state. We are, of course, we are a liberal state from the democracy point of view, but we are a progressive social state. Means that we have to find the money, just to make a short comment. But that doesn't mean that we have not to say that research can be only in this issue. Because if we do this, it's like the state during the 1984 of George Orwell. There is no difference. And so we are also to find the money for academic freedom in studying ancient Greek. We have to find the money for academic freedom in studying not only technology, not only science from this point of view, but also all the philosophy, all the kind. I know it's difficult, but there are several instruments that mean direct funding or also tax cut. There are very different solutions that you can find. Simone, you've got another big point, and that's the hypocrisia. I use the word in Italian for some questions in Italy, because it's clear that scientific research has to be free, but it's also clear that we had examples very tough for our tradition. I'll just make two examples. One is the stamina case, and the other case is there are too many people that try to believe that science is not science, that can be find some incredible medicine that the science didn't find. So this anti-scientific point of view is sometimes it's inside the parliament. And also sometimes inside the parliament, the idea that science has to be directed by the public power. And that happens with your example for the embryo research, but also happens with the experiment with the animals. We have the worst law in Europe about this. And I know that a very difficult question. I'm not, we cannot discuss now, of course, but a parliament, not the judge, but the parliament has to discuss difficult questions, has to discuss and find the solution, starting from the person at the center of the Constitution, but also the scientific research. Otherwise, we'll always on the border of anti-scientific point of view that sometimes are inside the parliament. So I totally agree with your comments, and I'm happy to have the opportunity to discuss with you all.
Thank you, Gianmario. I think if there is any question or comment from students or colleagues, yes, but I would ask you to come here because otherwise you won't be heard from Gianmario. So you just briefly say who you are so that we know. You can come here, yes.
Okay. Sorry, do you hear me, Professor? Yeah. Okay, perfect. So my name is Tanya Gorova. I'm not a student anymore. I'm not a researcher, but I work with researchers and with students. I'm an administrative staff, and I'm also involved in projects like STAR project and other particular projects related to the war in Ukraine and other, let's say, other countries with difficult situation. But my question will be related to the following. There is a, let's say, very good enough criteria between the researchers how to evaluate the research results and how to define which areas should be financed and so on. So, for example, there is a scientific papers with indexes and so on and so on. You talked about society. So we are talking about a lot about outreach of the research to the society. And but how the society, which is, let's say, normal people, which is not researchers, and probably they are not very cannot understand very well the research results, the importance of this area, of that area, how we should do the outreach of the research results, how we can explain it to the society, and how we can involve the society out of the universities and research centers in the defining of the future work of science. Because I think that society is a part, the community is a part of the research freedom. Yeah, because actually pays. Yes, okay, let's now go very deep into how we pay taxes and then we finance. So how it could be done? Because being on the border between the researchers and people, I can see that, okay, we can evaluate papers and so on, but when we are out of the university, how we can involve people in this? Thank you.
Gianmario, would you like to reply straight away, or we take other?
I can start, not answer, but just saying what I think about this very, 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 very important question. And the question is just talking from the researcher point of view, and then I will talk I would try to talk from the social society point of view. From the researcher point of view, the rule is the peer value. I mean, the peer evaluation. That if you look at the Popper method, there is always, the scientific method. And so the idea that a thesis has to be demonstrated. And the demonstration is strictly related to the idea that a demonstration between peers, so people that can discuss this. But from the social point of view, and the question, it's very interesting. What can be done? I just make an example. If you take a look of the Magna Carta Universitatum 2020, there is a sentence in the principle, values and responsibilities that I'm going to read. It's wrote in the slides. University require a reliable social contract with civil society on which supports pursuit of the highest possible quality of academic work with full respect for institutional autonomy. So the idea of this charter is that the university go outside university and with all kind of open science day, discussion about the democracy in science and what else, try to make a social contract. This is the word that is in the charter. A social contract means an agreement between science and the people, just to arrive to the idea that university has to perform at the highest possible quality of academic work. And this is the point, that the people has to find a way to make a democratic control, but also the university, I'm talking about university because we are in university, the university has to say, okay, these are our standards, these are our money. So in a word, transparency of what we do, and transparency and a relationship with social society. No more academia in a sense that scientists in the world is iperuranio, but science in the people, with the people, discussing with them. But I mean, science and democracy are not the same thing. But without science, there is no democracy. I apologize just to be so netto, but there is a very nice book that I like to quote, wrote by Gilberto Corbellini, a philosopher of history of science in Rome, and he wrote a beautiful book about democracy and science. And you can find a kind of answer about this idea. But without science, there is no democracy.
Is there any other question or comment? Yes.
Good afternoon, Professor Demuro. I am Gabriele D'Ottavio, and I work here at the Department of Sociology and Social Research as a historian, and I'm part of the work group working on this Gianmario project. So thank you very much also from my part for your very interesting presentation. I would like to ask you if you can expand on an issue which is of particular interest for historians, and which is closely related to the issues raised by Lucia and Simone about the limits of academic freedom as a universal right, and about also the persistent differences in the traditions, in the national traditions on concerning how to protect academic freedom, scientific freedom, and its distortion. And the case is the one of the historical negationists, of denialism. So I remember it was, I think, in 2006 or 2007, a European common legislation was introduced to counter historical denialism, against to counter the denialism of Holocaust. And I remember that there were different positions which were expressed by the community of historians. Some who were against the idea that the European institution should have the power to decide which are the historical records which have to be, which are uncontestable, not only by historians, but also by the law. So I don't know if you can expand on this very specific aspect of how to combine the need to protect academic freedom as a universal right without limits, and the need to guarantee a protection to the distortion of academic scientific freedom. Thank you very much again.
Gianmario, yes, if you would like to, and then I think in a few minutes we have to conclude.
No, okay, okay. Next time I will. This is a joke, of course, but next time I will ask the questions before starting to talk. No, it's a joke, of course. But this is another very tough question, and it's a question related to the negationist theory. And in my opinion, I just want to say very clear my opinion. In my opinion, every time you use criminal law to find limits for research, it's a sort of you're losing a battle. You're losing a battle against what is not written in scientific terms. So if you want to be, just to make the example, coming back to what Simone said, if you want to challenge anti-scientific theory, you need to be more transparent and clear and very set to say what scientific methods are. So the problem to deny what happened in the history is something that always in the past was used by autocracy. Just the example with the situation of Turkey and the Armenian question. But also now you can find this law in democratic state like France. And in my opinion is, do we need criminal law, or we need to be more and more books saying that this idea are against the history? And I believe that historians has the power to say what is a scientific research, and this is not has to be done by a judge or a parliament. I think that also the historians has the autonomy, like biologists, like engineers, like doctors, because science is it's a very serious thing that has rules. And so, in my opinion, in a discussion of ideas, even wrong ideas has to be challenged by the good ideas. I hope that it's clear. I hope my thought is not misunderstood. But what I want to say very clear is that every single science has to say, this is my strongest use of the scientific method. And the other thing are not science, are just spazzatura.
Thank
But
you.
I mean, let me say that it's very difficult to do. It's not easy at all.
Thank
So
you.
I also understand that some democracy can protect themselves. That's another question. Sorry, but scusami, Esther. Go ahead.
No. It's I was just thinking that this first exchange to me means two things. The first one is that we just open a Pandora vase, and then there are many elements that we will have to digest and discuss in the next classes. And the second one is that your contribution and Lucia and Simone contribution has been to me very, very inspiring, and that therefore next time you have no excuse and come here in person